subscribe to Plunder. So, do you honestly believe that Nicole Kessinger, Chris Watts' mistress, was literally caught on video in the driveway with him that fateful morning, Monday, August 13th, 2018, as he dragged the lifeless body of his pregnant wife, Shanann Watts, out to his work truck, his APC truck? And as he brought his children, who Lord knows what state they were in, but still alive, little Bella and Cece Watts, out to the truck, picked them up, put them in the back seat with their mother's lifeless body at their feet for the 45-minute drive out to Cervi 319, where he disposed of all of them. Shanann in a shallow grave, and Bella and Cece horribly in big oil tanks. Do you believe his mistress, Nicole Kessinger, was literally caught on video, but for some reason just was never arrested? Well, okay. If you do honestly believe that in your heart of hearts, I understand why, and I want to explain why I don't believe Nicole was literally there that morning, caught on video at least. I want to examine this video that I recorded back in 2021, and it was after I took the raw driveway videos, not videos I got from anywhere else, no other YouTuber, anything. It was the raw driveway videos I downloaded from Weld County, Colorado. There were multiple videos showing Chris Watts and his activities that fateful morning. Now, some people have claimed that they've seen Nicole Kessinger clear as day in those videos. This rumor, this conspiracy theory has been going on for years. 7 years now? And so if you do believe it, I feel like it's not your fault that you believe it, because I believe you've been led to believe that bit of misinformation for several reasons. Now, I've poured over these videos, the actual original videos. There's many of them that have been strung together. We had to string them together because they were little motion activated, about 3 minutes each, about 9 videos or so strung together, and then they would overlap. So it was confusing. So these are the reasons I really believe people believe Nicole was there. Some of them think she got away with murder. She was there that morning. She helped Chris Watts. She was even in the driveway, dictating what to do. Some people believe she even did the girls in. There's all these theories out there. So these are some of the reasons why people believe them and why they've been promoted. First off, I've noticed conspiracy theories are popular. They bring in the views. Now, not everyone who does this is going after money. Some people just demonetize their own videos about it. They just want to promote the theory. They honestly think Nicole Kessinger was there that day. I believe their eyes are deceiving them. They're looking at these videos. They're seeing Chris Watts walking several times back and forth in the driveway that morning. They've convinced themselves they see a woman with a ponytail, with wearing whatever, jeans or boots, and her purse, and you can draw all sorts of images around Chris Watts's frame and tell people they're looking at Nicole, and it's easy to convince them. Some people are doing this because they know the conspiracy theories bring the views, bring the money, without a thought of bringing misinformation to a case. Now, there's nothing wrong with dramatizing or bringing an interest to your storytelling. For example, I like to create dramatic thumbnails that display what I'm attempting to tell people. However, when it comes to changing the entire integrity of a case or the truth of a case, I don't want to ever do that. But some people know, okay, that brings the views. For whatever reason, conspiracy theories are popular. People hate Nicole Kessinger anyway. And they know, okay, if this is a quick way I can get 1 million YouTube views, maybe even if they don't believe it, they'll say, let me just say that Nicole Kessinger was there. And let me, zoom into this video so much to the point where it's degraded so much we can't tell who it is, but let me tell people it's Nicole. Some people know what they're doing. Some people are just doing it on purpose. Some people are doing it because they actually believe she was there. Some people wanted Nicole to be there because she's so unlikable and she's so unbelievable. Now that part I agree with. Nicole did this big interview with the Denver Post on November 15th, 2018. That was 3 months after the murders. People had already poured over her unbelievable, incongruent, conflicting interviews with police.
Alright, so we just picked up where we left off. But yes, so what? Thank you.
And that was in the middle of July.
Yeah, I think it was the second weekend of July. I'm almost positive.
Was the relationship intimate by that time?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And then as far as his work truck goes, were you ever in his work truck?
Just know which one it is, but I've never been in it.
And then I think I asked you this, but the white vehicle. I know he drove that. But were you ever in a white vehicle? One time? Okay. If you just tell me about that.
I'm trying to figure out where we went. I think it was like something close. We take my truck everywhere. It was a while ago. I don't remember where it was at. Like, I think it was something quick. Like, I think he had to, like, run an errand or something at, like, the grocery store. I think he just, like, his vehicle. But other than that, like, never. I was always in my truck. If I can remember, like, when that was, I'll let you know. But it, like, wasn't anything like he was going on a date. It wasn't, like, nothing. I think it was, like, a quick trip to go somewhere. It was just like, hey, I'll drive, okay.
That was actually going to be another question. Have you guys ever gone on vacation together?
Nope. We went to the sand dunes. Like, it was pretty recent. A couple weeks ago.
How'd that go, and how long the trip was that?
We went for like a day. We left Saturday. We came back on Sunday. We stayed one night out there.
Yeah. Do you think that, or did anybody know that you guys were going on that trip together?
I think a lot of people knew, but they didn't know it was Will.
So on your side or on his?
No, nobody on my side. I mean, people knew I was going to sand dunes, but my friends don't question that. I was just, I'm going to sand dunes for the weekend. And then, he just kept telling me it wasn't his. And he's like, you mad? I was like, no, I'm not mad at all. I just am, like, really surprised. And I was just like, please tell me the truth. Like, don't lie to me. Please don't lie to me. Like, this whole relationship, in a sense, if you think about it, it's kind of like, it needs to be as honest as possible. So, yeah, I asked him to tell me the truth, and he kept denying it a few times, and I was just like, Chris, like, I know this child is yours, and I'm like, well, because he kept saying he was just like, I don't want to ruin anything you have, this and this, and I'm like, Chris, like, you need to not worry about me right now. Like, what you need to worry about is your family. I'm like, all 4 of them, and I kept saying that, like, all 4 of them. I'm just like, I know that's your child. I'm like, and that's okay. I'm like, you need to put all of your energy right now into focusing on finding them and not anywhere else.
They knew Nicole's shady. And I agree, Nicole Kessinger is really shady. She was trying to protect herself. She was trying to look like Amber Fry. She was trying to get a book deal. She was trying to make it seem like she was just this innocent dove who met Chris Watts. He told her, he was going through a divorce. She was none the wiser. She didn't know Shanann was pregnant. She never looked them up. All these lies, things that people could easily suss out as lies. So just because she lied at that point about those things does not mean she lied about everything. Maybe she really did give Chris Watts an ultimatum, but maybe she didn't say, yeah, go do away with your family. We don't know where the truth lies in that range because she lied so much. So that's the last time we've officially heard from Nicole Kessinger, November 15th, 2018, except she was last spotted at a funeral in 2015. We went over that. She was wearing no wedding ring, so we wonder about what her life is like now. But she was pretty untruthful, and so that just ruined her credibility immediately. She didn't show like a depth of compassion for Shanann and the girls. She didn't even want to say Shanann's name until she was prompted. She admitted she convinced Chris to, pawn Shanann's ring. It was so many horrible things that people could hate Nicole Kessinger for, but I believe some people took it so far that they said, this mistress is unlikable. She must have been there in the driveway. It was easy for people to make that leap to say Nicole helped Chris and all this stuff because she lied about so much. Now, this security footage we're going to examine again from a video I did in 2021. It shows first Officer Dahl. He was looking at Nate, the hero neighbor. Some people got offended because they were like, how dare you call him Nate, the nosy neighbor? Well, that was the nickname for him back then. It didn't mean nosy in a bad way. It means, thank God, Nate was looking out and seeing what was going on around him. And he had video footage that helped basically convince Chris that he was dead to rights, and he basically confessed what he did ultimately, that he got rid of his whole family. We start out with Officer Dahl. He's in Nate's home and he's watching the video on Nate's TV, the security footage, Chris Watts doing crazy things in the driveway, backing his truck out of the driveway after these horrible murders. So because of this, some people think they see Nicole there. So first I'm playing Officer Dahl's footage, and then I'm playing the actual videos recorded on Nate's security camera. The whole time I'll play them, all of them back to back, just as we receive them, without zooming in and changing anything or anything like that. Another reason a lot of people believe Nicole was there, Nicole did live in a different town, and she didn't necessarily need to drive by the Watts house in Frederick, Colorado at all on her way to work, but mysteriously her phone did ping at a nearby tower at like 6:18 a.m. that same morning. So we have her Verizon records. I'm checking them. I'm sorry, it was 6:16 a.m., August 13th. That is proof from the literal Chris Watts discovery. Nicole Kessinger's phone pinged at 6:18 a.m. in Frederick, Colorado on Monday, August 13th, 2018. You will see that Chris Watts had already left home by 6:18 a.m. that morning. Was Nicole just driving by? Did she go by the house? Was she pretending, was she just snooping? Like a side piece, would do. Knowing Shanann was back in town, was she just snooping to see what was going on there? Or did she know more? That's one reason people think, Nicole knew more. Now, Nicole knew where Chris lived. She had been over this house before. There was a neighbor down the street, Betty, who said she saw some other gray truck, there that morning. Whether that was a truck that Nicole drove or not, we don't know. We don't have her literally on video. That's my main focus of making this video, and why I made it before years ago, because it's easy to jump on bandwagons just because you don't like a person. Nicole is very unlikable, let me tell you. I've done a lot of videos about her, but I'm not going to just create a lie just because it would get more views. I won't jump on the bandwagon of, yeah, Nicole was there. I definitely see her in this video, when it's just not true. Now, Nicole did come forward. She had these August 15th, 2018 interviews. There was one in the park. It was really hard to hear her.
Like, you already have the house and the car and the kids and the marriage and the wife. And I'm like, are you sure you don't want to fix that? I'm like, because what if you try to start over with somebody else, and what if hypothetically you didn't work out, or you know what I'm saying, or just any of that, where it's you should at least give her the benefit of the doubt. And he told me, I've tried to talk to her about all this stuff a few times, and it's just not working out. And I'm like, all right, if you're trying to separate from her and it's pretty finalized, then I will respect that. But just being in that house made me feel like he should just try to fix it. I actually kind of stepped away from him for a little while and just kind of maybe, I don't know, I felt like I wasn't sure if I wanted to carry on because I really with him, because I really wanted him to try to fix stuff, and then he just kind of says to me there's no fixing it.
She told a lot of different stories, and then after the bodies were uncovered, she came forward again, August 16th. Now, she only did this. They had already known that same day, August 15th. Cops had already figured out Chris is having an affair with someone. They had already, spoken with people at Anadarko. They knew. So Nicole, she came forward maybe to jump the gun, to get ahead of things, to make it look like, here I am, I'm coming forward, I'm helping you, I'm so helpful, aren't I so helpful? Even though she couldn't remember what 111-minute phone call she had had with Chris recently, all this stuff, don't get me started. She's not likable. But again, just because a person's not likable, I'm not going to manufacture evidence just because I know so many people out there don't like her. Her phone pinged. Does that mean she was literally at the house? We don't have evidence of that. But this claim to this day is still fresh and alive. And even D.A. Rourke out there, I'm no huge fan of him either, but he did come out on a podcast and say she wasn't there that day in the driveway. Now, of course, we wish more evidence had continued. Like Tammy Lee, CBI agent, said when Chris pled guilty, in essence, he stopped the clock. Basically, all their investigations, everything they were still digging into kind of just stopped. Now, did Chris do that because he was protecting Nicole in some way? That's such an easy, low-hanging fruit. People are asking me to this day, did Chris really blame everything on Nicole? Well, he's blamed her in certain ways. He's called her kind of like a Jezebel, and he's referencing Psalms or Proverbs, and I understand that aspect of him. Okay, trying to lay blame on someone, but hopefully the blame, he's put it on himself. He's made the choice, the idiotic, ridiculous, evil choice to get rid of his family. Totally unnecessary. Just to this day, it's so horrific. 7 years later, he could have walked away. He could have divorced Shanann. Shanann would have been fine, raising the children. Everything would have been fine. They could have figured out a way to co-parent. He could have gone on and see what kind of life he would have made with Nicole. Yeah, he didn't want to, I'm sure, give up his good guy image or, alimony or child support, but it would have worked out somehow instead of making the horrific choice he made. So the point is, let's go over this video again. It used to be on YouTube, so now I'm refreshing it a little bit and just wanting us to go over it again, to literally take a look. Because what kind of scares me is the popularity of conspiracy theories. I don't know why they're becoming so popular. I know there's money in it for people to kind of go with the crowd and go with the crowd of people who think differently. And there's nothing wrong with thinking differently. There's nothing wrong with examining cases based on the evidence. I'm such a huge evidence person. The evidence was against Chris Watts overwhelmingly in this case. Do I believe Nicole Kessinger is 100% honest? No. Do I think she had anything to do with these murders? There's no evidence that we've seen. There's no evidence I've seen that, if I were a juror in a court of law, that I could convict Nicole of doing anything. She's unlikable, yes, but that doesn't mean, oh, I need to punish her just because I don't like her. And I think that's where the difference lies. It's scary that people are willing to go so far to convict someone without evidence. Now, like in the Bryan Kohberger case, you will see certain people who just fawn all over him for whatever reason. They refuse to believe any evidence presented. They refuse to believe the DNA evidence on the knife sheath. That's actual, real evidence. I don't believe investigators made that up. Some people think, just out of the clear blue sky, out of no evidence, that Bryan Kohberger was some kind of undercover agent and he's been double-crossed and convicted. Some people believe because of his autism diagnosis or his neurodivergence. Okay, they feel sorry for him or they feel like he's being taken advantage of. Now, I can understand a person having sympathy for a person who's neurodivergent, has learning differences or what have you, but that doesn't automatically impugn innocence on Kohberger. And the fact that he got up there and he pled guilty to these crimes, it means nothing to some people because they're of the theory that he was pressured into pleading guilty. He's been framed for these crimes, probably the same people sending him money. But I don't understand, where is their evidence that in their mind Bryan Kohberger is innocent? They can't present evidence. It's like an emotional thing. Maybe they relate to Brian Koberger. Maybe they think differently. Maybe they have visual snow syndrome. Whatever reason they empathize and sympathize with Brian so much, it clouds some people's thinking into, oh, he must be innocent. I can easily believe everyone framed him. Makes no sense. Find the real killers. That's what I'm reading on Reddit in these different Brian Koberger threads. I'm like, oh my goodness, where is your evidence supporting this? I want to see people get fair trials, like, Richard Allen. You wanted Karen Reed. All these cases, you want the person to get a fair trial. You want the actual evidence to be presented. To me, maybe it's a good thing Chris Watts didn't go to trial to drag everyone through this, but I'm scared that some people could get on a jury, kind of like the O.J. Simpson trial. I think that jury got it wrong. They can see evidence. They can be confused by certain DNA evidence, especially back then in the 90s with the OJ trial. They let all of these other emotions take the forefront. They don't care that 2 people lost their lives in the OJ Simpson case. They don't care that a mother was taken away brutally from her children. All they care about is some vendetta against police, which didn't help anyone win anything by OJ getting off. So that's why I'm such an evidence person. What does the evidence say? What does the actual evidence present? Forget all the other evidence about why we might want a person freed. Oh, because they look good or because a person relates to them, not because of the actual evidence of the crime they did or didn't commit. So that's why it's important for me to do this whole thing. Let's examine this whole thing coming up that I created years ago, get it back on YouTube and examine it closely and maybe get rid of so many conspiracy theories about whether or not Chris Watts is blaming Nicole now or not. There's been different inmates who have been in there with him and they come out with these stories like, yeah, Chris is saying this and Chris is saying that, and we just don't know what's true. People just want to, of course, sell books or, get views for their articles or even views for their YouTube videos, but it's not worth it to me if it's filled with lies. Let's just try and find the truth. The truth sets us free. It stands on its own. Okay, watch this, which I created years ago. Stay tuned. We'll see if I stream this live or not. We can chat about it either way. And I'm going back through old videos and refreshing them with as much as we've found out lately. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to Plunder. This is video from Monday, August 13th, 2018 at 1:48 a.m. as Shanann Watts was dropped off at her home on Saratoga Trail by her friend Nicole Atkinson. It was taken from Officer Dahl's body camera footage as he watched the video on Tuesday, August 14th, 2018 at 9:34 a.m. at neighbor Nate's house. The next video he examines is at 5:18 a.m. as Chris Watts backs his APC work truck into his driveway and walks towards the garage and back again towards his truck and appears to wait. What happened in between those morning hours of 1:48 a.m. after Shanann arrived at home and approximately 5:50 a.m. when Chris pulled away from his driveway is still unknown years later. However, it could hold the truth and stand as evidence to keep Chris Watts in prison and dismiss any other theories bandied about that night. Following these first 2 videos from Officer Dahl's body camera, you will see 9 videos taken from neighbor Nate's security camera. Each video is 3 minutes and 13 seconds long. That's why you'll see a transition in between each of those time periods. Some people see only Chris walking around for the 30 minutes or so that he goes back and forth in his house, bringing out items and the like. Some claim he wasn't alone. Some people see Chris Watts walking backwards as if he's dragging a heavy item. Some people see Chris bending down at points to pick up a child walking or one that's running towards him. Some people think it's a dog. Some people see Chris Watts' truck moving as he loads his family into the truck. Some people see more than one person, some people don't, and what's most important is what a jury would have seen and what that would have led the jury to believe about what their eyes were telling their brains they saw and surmise what actually happened. Of course, if it is Bella or Cece walking up to Chris in the driveway in this video, that means that his first false confession blaming Shanann for the whole thing won't hold water. That's why Neighbor Nate's heroic videos are so important. Please note that the integrity of the videos means that there's a lag. It could exist. There's a degradation or a blurring of the videos at some point. And the motion activation could cause for overlapping of the frames. And that could be why some people think they see the video lag as another person or as a ponytail behind Chris's head. But the real question is, what do you see? And what would it have led you to believe about what you were watching happen that morning in the driveway? So let's watch these 9 unedited videos together. That's why I'm not zooming in or anything. If anything, Officer Dahl's body camera footage looking at Shanann being dropped off at home proves that Nicole Atkinson just dropped her off. Doesn't look like anyone else sneaked in the side or switched drivers or something like that. We know Shanann came home, and I think most people believe without a shadow of a doubt Chris Watts just committed all of these heinous crimes by himself, and the video seeks to prove that. Please note that Neighbor Nate's security videos, which again were motion activated, that's why you won't see them consistent throughout this whole thing. There goes Watts walking off. Please note that they don't have audio, it's only the visuals. So unlike Officer Dahl's body camera footage that we just heard with Neighbor Nate's dog barking in the background and a little bit of breathing or whatever movements, we won't hear anything on Neighbor Nate's videos, which would have been helpful because certain Ring video footage, and I'm not sure if this is a Ring camera or a Vivint or something else, certain times we can hear the audio, but the videos we received did not have audio, so we just strictly have to depend upon our eyes to try and figure out what's happening here. Of course, a lot of people curse the existence of that tree. There's so much that we missed with that tree in the way. In fact, Chris Watts had even mentioned the fact that that tree was there when he put his hands on his head and he thought he was caught as he examined the body camera footage later that same day, August 13th, when he stood there with Neighbor Nate and the officer, and he thought he was busted at that point because he thought everyone could see shadows and everything that was going on in the driveway. Chris Watts said to Nate, "Oh, even with that tree there, you know, your camera catches cars coming down the street." That's what Nate confirmed. My camera can catch cars coming even down this way or that way. And Chris Watts said, even with that tree there? And so he was obviously aware of the tree. He was obviously aware of Neighbor Nate's camera. I think Chris Watts did a lot to try and avoid Neighbor Nate's camera. I don't know if Chris Watts monkeyed around with his own Vivint camera and doorbell camera so Shanann would not know that Nicole Kessinger was coming over to visit at least twice. I don't know how Watts got around that. We know in the messages, Shanann says something like, "You better call Vivint before I flip and work this out." So I think he obviously was messing around with his own cameras in his own system so Shanann wouldn't know certain things. But Watts seemed supremely aware of Nate's camera. I think that's one reason he may have made up that whole story. I don't know if anyone was really stealing tools out of his truck and trying to jimmy the lock in the back with a flathead screwdriver like he kept proclaiming. And that was the reason Chris Watts began parking his truck. Not only his APC truck, it sounds like, but also Shanann's Lexus farther down, claiming he wanted Nate's camera to catch it just to see if there was a thief or something. But perhaps Chris Watts was really trying to park the trucks out of Nate's camera range. It's not clear. But with Chris saying, "Oh, your camera can catch things even with that tree there," he was aware of what he was doing and what he was trying to hide, but the camera still caught portions of it. And Chris Watts even tried to hide, it's my belief, when he parked over Nikki's place. Now we know Nikki's little condo/apartment where she no longer lives on Claude Court. She called it her little nest. I'm picking up on more things the more of this footage I review again after a year or two. Well, in one of Nicole Kessinger's interviews, she claimed that parking at her place, her apartment condo, was pretty bad. So sometimes Chris Watts would have to park outside of her condo, kind of like outside of the fence. And she tells the policeman, and I'll link to these below, her interviews once again, she tells the cops, Nikki tells the cops that since parking was so bad at her condo, Chris Watts had to park outside of the gates. Now, part of me thought, well, she's probably lying again. I don't know if parking is just that bad, that he can't find one single spot to park outside of her apartment, and he would have to go outside of the gate somewhere to park kind of on a different outside street. It seems a bit extreme and a bit much. I think these two were very hyper aware of not having any neighbors witness them, trying not to pick up activity on cameras. And it reminds me, I wrote a whole list almost of all the security footage we are missing in this case. Now, of course, some of it we won't maybe ever get. But it reminded me of all the missing Chris Watts and Nicole Kessinger videos. We never saw any footage from the Lazy Dog. They went to BJ's, that brewery. Around the same weekend they went camping, July 28th and 29th. They went to the movies at the Orchard. They went to, of course, the Great Sand Dunes. They stopped at the Oasis, kind of like a gas station place, to load up on ice and all the other supplies for their Great Sand Dunes camping trip. And some of these places, of course, won't even have the video, or even if they try and supply us with the video footage, even if cops were able to procure the video footage prior to Chris Watts pleading guilty and everything just kind of stopping, some of it won't work out, like the Home Depot that Chris Watts reportedly visited before going out on his date with Nicole Kessinger August 11th. The videos we have are just too huge. You can't even upload them to YouTube since they're 24 hours long. So there goes Chris Watts walking out again to his truck. And the way some of these videos, they kind of repeat or overlap, and that's why some people thought there were two people walking out right behind one another. So some places, of course, we don't even have video footage. But again, Nikki and Chris Watts went to the Shelby Mustang Museum. They went to the Bandamere races. They went a lot of places that I thought about it today we don't have video footage for. And Kevin Kovac went to such pains. Oh, I feel sorry for him. Speaking to Nikki Kessinger and all of her rambling throughout her interviews, he went to such pains to figure out where Nicole Kessinger and Chris Watts even sat in certain restaurants just so they could tap that restaurant and say, hey, I need to know, August 11th at the Lazy Dog, a couple was seated, you hang a right when you go in here at approximately 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. I need to pull that footage. So all of that, I don't know, it's almost like it went to waste. So there he is walking into his garage, and this should be the footage where we see him walk back out briefly. You see lights go on, and there he goes walking back out. Some people surmise that he was kind of just waiting because There's a lot of lag in between some of this where Watts, I'm just wondering, what the heck is he doing? Where when the video first opened, we see him pull his truck up like this, we see him walk towards the garage, and then we see him walk back towards his truck really quickly, briefly, and then he must just be sitting there, and so see that light just kind of disappeared. I don't know if those were his headlights, his fog lamps, I don't know everything that's on that, and there he goes back again. So I'm not sure if he was waiting for, we know at some point his neighbor is going to drive by in that infamous red car going off to the gym. So I'm not sure if he just didn't want to be seen. And thankfully he did do all this horrible stuff in front of a camera. I mean, not that he performed the actions, I'm not thankful for that, but at least he had a camera witness. Imagine if Watts would have done all this in the back of his home. There are no cameras back there, as Chris Watts told police when he was trying to, I think, throw shade and suspicion on his neighbors behind him. But maybe he found it difficult to try and maneuver out of the back of his house, so that's why he performed all these horrible actions in front of his house in the driveway. But he might have taken a pause to make sure no neighbor could see him there, no neighbor that happened to be driving by that early in the morning. Whether premeditated or not, his plan was just evil and ridiculous. So even if he had been thrown off by Shanann's plane landing late, and whatever happened, whatever he planned to do initially, thinking he had it all down pat, whether someone else knew of his plans or not, it was ridiculous. At some point later in these videos, we will see him carrying out a pretty visible red gasoline can and carrying it around the truck and ultimately finding a space to place it back in the bed of the truck. Now, some people think he used this gas can to perhaps as part of some big master plan to blow up the Cervi 319 site and get rid of evidence. Other people think maybe he just used it to cover the smell just on the way there or afterward in his trucks. What's most ridiculous is that this man had it in his mind that he could get away with something like this, whatever his plan was. To blame it on someone else, the entire tragedy? Someone broke in the house and did this to his family? Or whatever was on his mind, we know it was pure evil to make him conduct this plan. You can always go back and rewind. People have studied these videos just so in depth. And for this one, I didn't want to zoom in because I didn't want it to get even blurrier. Perhaps it's better to watch this on a desktop, a laptop, or even a television if you want to try and see a little bit more in depth, if you want to see it a little bit closer. But what's also frustrating is that when Chris Watts was allegedly giving his, final February 2019 confession to law enforcement, and they asked him, what were you planning on doing with that gas can? He still plays dumb, even though he's allegedly telling the whole truth and clearing Shanann's name. He still plays dumb, and he says, oh, I don't know what I was planning. I don't know what I was doing. I didn't have a gun. And they were trying to ask him, well, were you planning on hurting yourself? Or, well, I didn't have a weapon. So there goes the shadow. There he goes. And with him going towards his garage, I believe that was his shadow. I don't see another shadow at this point coming towards him. But people have rewinded these videos. They've really watched in depth. They've watched the headlights. There you can see more motions. You can see different lights going on and off. So it's not exactly clear what's happening because the tree blocks so much of it. But another thing about the parking situation, for example, when he parked at Nikki's place and allegedly parked far away, that makes more sense because the July 4th incident when Chris Watts spent the night over Nikki's house and Shanann was blowing up his phone, calling him like 10 times in a row. And he said he went outside to speak with Shanann because she was so pissed off, and he kind of stood by his car, I guess the Lexus perhaps. It makes more sense if he would have parked that Lexus farther away, because I couldn't imagine him walking right outside of Nikki's apartment and talking to Shanann right there, pretty close by in the parking lot. It just seemed like such a bold action. Now, as we watch this footage again closely of Chris Watts, there he is walking back towards the garage again. Another thing we can check for is the latest news. If you watch Unmasked, I'm going to link to the channel below, a great YouTube channel, and I will encourage people to join her Patreon. So I won't go in depth about the latest buzz that people are speaking of, but it concerns like a plastic bin. It gives me the vibes of the Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell case when we saw Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell making that trip to that storage unit, and we still don't know what was really contained in those plastic bins, but perhaps there could have been a similar thing going on with this case. So as we learn more details, it helps to keep our eyes peeled for those details when examining video footage that we've had for more than 2 years now in the Watts case. Staring at this video footage again up close, just in depth, it's almost like taking a Rorschach ink test. Those ink blotter tests. Something's thrown on the page, and everyone you ask will see something different. One person might see a scorpion, and another person might see a monster, another person might see something beautiful. So, in essence, that's what we're getting here. And you can almost tell like that when the light changes, maybe when the wind shifts, and it doesn't look like it was a very windy day because the tree isn't moving much. We could also glance at the flag on the right bottom hand side to get an idea of just how still the wind is. And over time, you will see the light changing as it gets lighter and lighter. And towards the end, when it's approximately 5:50 a.m., it's really light outside at that point. And speaking of missing videos, we never saw this morning's video footage from the vantage point of the Watts home. Now we know it was working as of 1:48 a.m. when we saw that vivid video of Shanann coming home for the last time. Now that was pretty obvious that she was coming in the door. Nicole Atkinson dropped her off, and Nicole just drove away. And even though Nicole said Shanann waved, we didn't see her waving in the video, but maybe when she went inside the house, I don't know if she peeked through the window and waved, or maybe just in Nicole's memory she waved. I don't remember seeing her wave. But the point is, that video was working as of 1:48 a.m. Now, I'm not sure if Chris Watts disabled it by the time he started doing all these other actions, but I think the video, there he is coming out, I think the video would have captured something, that doorbell video footage, even though he's parked perhaps closer to Nate's side of things. We may have seen some movement. Because we saw Nicole Atkinson driving away, we know their video could capture a good portion of the street, and we might have been able to see more from a different vantage point instead of just picking over this same slim vantage point. With so much talk about Chris Watts allegedly wanting his day in court, and there he is walking around again, closer to the camera. There's that red gas can, infamous, that he's placing so gingerly back there, trying to figure out. Then he takes it out and walks some more, like he's trying to figure out for some reason where to put that gas can, unless he's trying to waft the scent, the strong scent of gasoline all around the car. Did he look forward to dogs sniffing this truck and trying to confuse them with the scent of gasoline? I don't know his whole purpose, and of course he won't clarify. But it's important to just try and have as much factual information as possible in video form with all this talk about an alleged potential 35C post-conviction relief motion, or even just to have it for posterity, for history's sake. A lot of things disappeared since the beginning of this case. Nicole Kessinger didn't help. She issued different privacy strikes, privacy violations against different YouTubers, even those of us who just simply posted her interviews. Even if we redacted her phone number, which I'm sure is not her phone number anymore, her name isn't even Nicole Kessinger anymore, and her address isn't her address anymore. But she attempted to control the narrative and issued so many privacy strikes that certain videos have been deleted. You'll notice certain portions of her own interview. It's just her own interview to law enforcement that they gave us through the Weld County DA. And then certain videos they've never released. So there's Chris again walking out back towards the street portion. You just can kind of see little glimpses of him. And then you see headlights. And you don't know which ones are the interior lights of the truck or which ones are his headlights. But one thing the Netflix documentary did for this case was bring a whole new resurgence of people, millions and millions of viewers who had not followed this case from the beginning, like a lot of us. So I'm finding and seeing comments where people have written things like, wow, I never saw the footage of Shanann's Lexus being impounded, and I never saw certain things. So you see how that just repeated there. You kind of saw Watts twice because the video just transitioned. And so some people think they're seeing more than one person. I personally, if I sat on a jury, I could not say that I saw anyone else besides Chris Watts, any other adult who was alive besides Chris Watts during this video footage. And believe me, I've looked and I've looked and I've tried. And there is such a thing to the point where you can tell people certain things and they will believe it. If you have a bit of audio that's hard to hear and you interpret it one way and you put the words on the screen and you're telling the person what they're hearing, they are more influenced to believe they're hearing that as opposed to what the person's really saying. The same thing can happen with video footage. If I tell you, look there, you see this, you see that, and you don't see it, it can influence you to see something that may not be there. Personally, I don't think I see another woman walking around with a ponytail in this driveway. However, I do remember seeing portions where, and I will try to point them out, where Chris Watts appears to walk backwards slowly, slower than he's walked in previous clips, and he appears to be kind of dragging or lugging something. I don't think it's that portion there. He looks like his gait, his steps were normal there, just like a little shadow. And I have seen what appears to be the shadow perhaps of a child running towards him in other portions, and it looks like he bends down to pick the child up. So I'm going to try to really keep an eye out for those. And it's not when he's on this side of the truck, closer to the camera, so we can't see for sure if it's a child coming out that he bends down to pick up. But those are the things I do see. I do see where at one point he's going to look like he picks something up, a child perhaps, and then I do see the point at which he's walking backwards and most likely putting Shanann in the car. Now we know that famous quote, unfortunately, by Shanann's brother where he spoke of something too gruesome for viewers. I believe that might have been the part right there where perhaps he might have walked backwards. That's just how difficult this footage is to see. And there's such a thing where you can convince yourself of what you're seeing. I forget the psychological name for it, but if you tell yourself you're seeing something, it's confirmation bias. That's what I'm trying to think of. There it is right there. He just picked something up. He leaned down to pick something up. So if you rewind and rewind again, you'll kind of see him dipping. And I've, again, not zoomed in. I haven't highlighted. There he is again. It looks like, oh, that's because it's repeating. So in that portion right around there, he might have been picking up one of his daughters, allegedly, who wandered out to the driveway. And I thought it was just so sad. Again, I must give credit to Unmasked for that recent great discussion, where I don't know why some people just don't want to credit them from what they heard. There's no problem with crediting other people when you can. Or my point is, it was so poignant when someone said, well, why would one of the children follow Chris Watts if he had just harmed them? First of all, of course, we talk about potential brain damage or oxygen deprivation. A person wouldn't be in their right mind. They wouldn't know what to do. And not only that, the poignant part was that Bella and Cece trusted Chris Watts. That's their dad. Can you imagine? You just never think of a parent hurting you. And so, of course, you're going to trust and follow if you're so young and you don't know what the heck is going on and you're confused and traumatized. But people often speak of Shanann's brother talking about videos allegedly that were too gruesome for the public. They may have only been speaking about these videos we're watching now. He spoke about his family being carried out like trash. That led some people to believe that there was some other set of videos that the public isn't seeing. Personally, I believe Shanann's brother was referencing this set of videos, but perhaps he may not have seen them at that point when he made that statement. So that's why it was not clear who was still alive at this point. And it's still not clear, but imagine if this is the only video that a jury ever had to witness, and this is what you had to make a decision on. The reason the linchpin, the importance of this video is so important is because if Chris Watts ever tries to get a new trial, and he ever tries to go with that first fake testimony of lies where he blames Shanann, of course that means that the girls would not have been alive when he left for Cervi 319. This video is so important because if the shadow that the armchair detective was one of the first to ever say, look, I see some shadows, and then all of a sudden we see D.A. Rourke kind of recanting his statement, and we also see Chris Watts talking about the shadows in February 2019, or talking about rather this footage with the girls allegedly still alive, and there he is pulling off, headed for Cervi 319. This video would prove that Chris is first, and there he is walking back again. That's why it's so confusing. This video would prove that Chris Watts, his first testimony blaming Shanann, was a lie. Now, some parts of this, it looks like he potentially changed clothes there. That's another point of contention. People think, there's two different set of jeans and your shirt looks different. It's just so hard to tell. But if this is all we had to go with, if this is the only thing a jury would ever see, no other videos from no other cameras, and thank God Nate paid for his package to have these cameras saving video footage, what would you decide? And where is the other video footage of the September 21st lady entering the Watts home? Nate has that footage, so you can imagine what vantage point we might see. We might see a woman, September 21st, walking into the Watts home. What does that video footage show, and why have they never released that? And where's the video footage that Nate allegedly received or captured? So there's Watts pulling off again. This is why these videos are confusing, because they overlap. We were not given one full 30-minute video, continuous, uninterrupted, and unedited from Weld County. We were given 9 videos, approximately a little bit longer than 3 minutes each, and they overlapped, and that's why it caused a bunch of confusion. But we get the gist from what we just watched. But where is Nate's other video footage of Chris Watts allegedly leaving his home by his side gate? All of these things, they could paint a much more complete picture of the entire case. And I understand some things just aren't going to work. Some things we're not going to get. Maybe they did the best they could with Home Depot, the best they could trying to provide us those McDonald's video footage to try and see if Nicole Kessinger pinged. I don't think she would go inside McDonald's. The same morning, August 13th, we didn't even get August 13th footage. We got the 10th through the 12th. So things are just not complete, and it's frustrating, it's understandable, but it's good to have in terms of historical purposes. I can't help but wonder if we will ever get more videos. Deuteronomy 6:6-7, these commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts, impress them on your children, talk about them when you sit at home, and when you walk along the road, and when you lie down, and when you get up. Thank you so much for watching.